Have you ever imagined that the souls of the deceased could communicate with us to ask for our help? This extraordinary reality marked the life of Maria Simma, a humble Austrian woman who received a unique mission from God, to be an intermediary between the souls in purgatory and the world of the living. After learning her story, you will never see purgatory in the same way again. Chapter 1. The Divine Call. Maria Agata Simma was born on February 5, 1915, in Sonntag, a small village located in Vorarlberg, Austria. Her life was not destined for fame or earthly riches, but to become an instrument of divine mercy. From her youth, she demonstrated deep piety and devotion, frequently attending the religious instructions given by her parish priest, Father Karl Fritz, who planted in her the seeds of unwavering faith. Divine providence, which arranges all things with infinite wisdom, prepared Maria's soul for an extraordinary mission. Through her simple and discreet life, the Lord would manifest His mercy toward the souls in purgatory, reminding the Church and the world of a fundamental truth of our faith, the communion of saints and the efficacy of our suffrages for the deceased. Like many saints and mystics throughout church history, Maria did not seek these extraordinary gifts. On the contrary, she lived humbly, accepting God's will with docility. Her generous response to that heavenly call would transform not only her own life, but also the lives of many souls, both in this world and beyond. The Lord, who is admirable in His saints, as proclaimed by Holy Scripture, manifested in Maria Simma this admirable work of His grace. She would become a living reminder to all the faithful that our charity must extend beyond the limits of this world, also embracing our deceased brothers and sisters who complete their purification in purgatory. Chapter 2. Childhood and Youth. Maria Simma's childhood passed within a large and deeply Catholic family, although marked by poverty and economic difficulties. Her parents, José Antonio Simma and Aloisa Rinderer, had 8 children, with Maria being the second. Despite the age difference between her parents, 18 years, the Simma home was founded on Christian values and an unwavering trust in divine providence. The family lived in a modest dwelling on the outskirts of Sonntag, inherited from an old carpenter named Franz Bickel. José Antonio worked hard as a postman, laborer, and farmer to support his large family. The scarcity of material resources forced the children to contribute from an early age to the family's upkeep, the boys as laborers and the girls as caregivers for other children. Despite material privations, Maria's childhood was filled with spiritual riches. From a very young age, she showed a natural inclination toward piety and devotion. She participated fervently in the Holy Mass, frequently received the sacraments, and demonstrated a special devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. Her parish priest, noticing the pure and receptive soul of the little girl, devoted special time to nurture her with a solid catechetical formation. After finishing her primary studies, Maria had to leave home to work as a nanny in various towns: Svevia, Hard, Nenzing, and Lauterach. Far from being discouraged, her faith grew stronger amid difficulties. In those youthful years, listening to the voice of the Lord in her heart, she felt the desire to consecrate herself completely to God through religious life. With great hope, Maria attempted 3 different times to enter convent life. She prepared her trousseau by begging for part of it and earning the rest with her work. However, her weak physical constitution became an obstacle to fulfilling this desire. The superiors of the religious congregations, although recognizing her spiritual fervor, considered that her fragile health would not allow her to bear the demands of convent life. After these failed attempts to embrace religious life, Maria worked for 3 years at the San Jose home in Feldkirch. Later, she returned to her family home, where she dedicated herself to the care of the local church, and after her father's death in 1947, lived alone in the family house. To support herself, she tended the garden, living in poverty and receiving occasional help from charitable people. Chapter 3. The First Visit. The year 1940 marked a turning point in Maria Simma's life. While sleeping in her humble room, she was awakened by a mysterious presence. Startled as she got up, she distinguished in the dim light the figure of an unknown man. Her first reaction was fear, thinking that he was an intruder. However, something about that presence transmitted a strange serenity, despite the suffering reflected on his face. With a trembling voice, Maria asked, "Who are you, and what do you want from me?" The figure did not answer immediately, but his gaze, penetrating and pleading, revealed deep anguish. Finally, in an almost inaudible voice, the visitor spoke, "I need your help. I died long ago and now suffer in purgatory. Your prayers can ease my suffering." Maria, incredulous and confused, made the sign of the cross repeatedly, fearing that it was an illusion or worse, a demonic temptation. However, the apparition remained there, unmoved by the signs of the cross. With growing confidence, Maria recalled the teachings about the communion of saints and the efficacy of prayer for the deceased that she had received since childhood. That night, Maria prayed fervently for the soul of the unknown man, offering a full rosary and the sacrifices of the following day. She also promised to have a holy mass celebrated for the eternal rest of his soul. The following night, the man appeared again, but this time his face reflected peace and gratitude. "Your prayers have eased my suffering," he said, "and soon I will be freed to behold the face of God. Other souls will come asking for your help. Do not reject them." In the following years, the visits from the souls in purgatory were sporadic. Maria kept these experiences discreet, confiding them only to her spiritual director, who advised her with prudence and wisdom. It was not until November 1st, 1953, the Feast of All Saints, that her mission took a new, more intense and painful turn. On that significant date, a more imposing presence manifested before her. It was a priest who had died centuries ago in distant Cologne in the year 555. With gravity, the priest explained that he had participated in the martyrdom of Saint Ursula and her companions, as well as committed grave sins against the faith, purity, and the sacrament of holy orders. His purification in purgatory would prolong until the final judgment, unless someone voluntarily accepted to suffer in reparation for his sins. After reflecting and praying, Maria generously accepted this vicarious expiation. For an entire week, she endured indescribable pains. She felt as if all her limbs were dislocated, experienced the sensation of daggers violently piercing her body, and at times it was as if a blunt blade bent and broke against her, entering every part of her being. At the end of this purifying period of suffering, the priest appeared again, now radiant with light, to thank her and announce his definitive liberation. Did you know the story of this servant of God, Maria Simma, before this video? Leave your answer in the comments and continue discovering her story. Chapter 4. Purgatory Revealed. Through these mysterious visits, Maria Simma received extraordinary revelations about the reality of purgatory, a state of purification as real as it is frequently forgotten in contemporary preaching. The souls entrusted to her deep truths that were in perfect harmony with Catholic doctrine, but illuminated this truth of faith with new details. "Purgatory is in many places," one soul explained to her once. "The souls do not come from purgatory, they come with purgatory." Maria understood that purgatory is not so much a geographic location as it is a state of the soul undergoing purification. She perceived it in various ways in her visions, always with immense multitudes of souls in continuous movement, some arriving and others departing toward celestial glory. In one of these visions, Maria could distinguish the different groups of souls according to their faults. Those who had sinned against the faith carried in their hearts a somber flame, while those who had fallen into sins of impurity exhibited a red flame. She also saw how the souls grouped according to their state in life, priests, religious, lay Catholics, Protestants, and even pagans. To her astonishment, she discovered that the souls of Catholics were meant to suffer more intensely than those of Protestants, for they had received more light and graces during their earthly lives. The pagans, on the other hand, experienced a less intense but more prolonged purgatory, as they received fewer suffrages from the living. Catholics, conversely, were more aided and thus were liberated more quickly. Divine justice, in perfect harmony with merciful love, applied to each soul a type of purification proportional to the nature of its faults and the degree of attachment with which they were committed. The intensity of suffering varied considerably. One day in a rigorous purgatory could be more terrible than 10 years in a mild purgatory. Even children as young as 6 might need to suffer for a considerable time to achieve the purity necessary for the beatific vision. Maria was deeply impressed to discover that some souls had to remain in purgatory until the final judgment, while others passed through it quickly, almost flying. It was also revealed to her that the devil could torment the souls of purgatory, especially those who had been a cause of perdition for others during their earthly life. Despite their sufferings, the souls in purgatory expressed admirable patience and continually praised the divine mercy that had allowed them to escape hell. Aware that they had deserved eternal punishment, they sincerely repented of their sins and constantly implored Maria's intercession, the Mother of Mercy, and the prayers of the faithful in the Church militant. Chapter 5. Expiatory Sufferings. From December 8, 1953, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, Maria Simma's mission acquired a deeper and more painful dimension. It was no longer just about praying for the souls in purgatory, but also about voluntarily accepting expiatory sufferings in her own body to accelerate the liberation of those souls that could only be freed through this kind of vicarious reparation. After the case of the Cologne priest, Maria took charge of 6 more souls that could only be liberated by accepting expiatory sufferings. Among them were Bertha, a French woman who died in 1740, a Viennese woman who died in 1810, 2 Italian prostitutes, 2 young people from Innsbruck who died during a bombing, and an Italian priest. The Blessed Virgin had promised her that after helping these souls, she could more easily free many others. The sufferings Maria experienced varied according to the sins she had to expiate. When it came to abortions or impurities, she experienced terrible bodily pains and unbearable nausea. To expiate indifference and religious coldness, she felt as if she were lying for hours among blocks of ice, with a cold that penetrated to the marrow of her bones. In August 1954, a new way of helping the souls began. Paul Gisinger from Koblach appeared to her, asking her to recommend that his 7 children, whose names she was given, donate 100 shillings for the missions and commission 2 masses for his soul. In this way, he would be freed from purgatory. From then on, many other souls began to present similar requests: donations for the missions, stipends for masses, recitation of the rosary. During the Marian year of 1954, the visits from the souls intensified, especially in October and November. Until the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, souls came every night requesting prayers or expiatory sufferings. The number of requests became so numerous that Maria obtained permission to ask for the help of other people willing to pray consciously. However, prayers for deceased priests were to be performed exclusively by other priests. Maria accepted these sufferings with humility and complete surrender to the divine will, aware of her commitment as a suffering soul. On one occasion, exhausted by fatigue, she asked that, if possible, the souls come less frequently so she could have the necessary rest to continue her daily tasks. In response, a voice reminded her of her vow of total surrender as a suffering soul. Was your vow mere words, a simple fantasy? If the Mother of God takes you seriously, you must accept what is asked of you. Despite the physical exhaustion and constant pain, Maria received supernatural strength to fulfill her mission. The very souls of purgatory promised to help her with her daily tasks. Over time, she learned to clearly distinguish between what she experienced in dreams and what occurred during her waking state. The souls would wake her, speak to her, and show her their sufferings. Sometimes she had to endure pain during the day while carrying out her regular activities. Chapter 6. The Teachings of the Souls. The souls in purgatory entrusted Maria Simma not only with their personal stories and requests, but also with valuable teachings about spiritual life, Christian morals, and the dangers of our time. These souls, purified by suffering and already free from earthly illusions, conveyed eternal truths with clarity, truths that the living often forget or relativize. One of the most frequent concerns expressed by the souls was the Christian education of children. "It is no use lamenting the bad times we live in," they said. "It is necessary to remind parents that they are the main responsible ones. They cannot serve their children any worse than by satisfying all their desires and giving them everything they want, simply to keep them happy and avoid their tantrums. This is how pride takes root in the child's heart." D. The souls insisted that when children start school without knowing how to recite the Our Father or make the sign of the cross, without any knowledge of God, the parents excuse themselves by saying that it is the job of catechists and religion teachers. However, where religious formation does not begin in early childhood, it is unlikely to endure later in life. "Teach the children detachment" was one of their most emphatic messages. The souls explained that religious indifference and the moral decay of our time have their roots in the fact that children have not learned to renounce. Over time, they become unsatisfied, undisciplined adults who want everything without restrictions. This lack of self-control is the cause of so much sexual immorality, contraceptive practices, and abortions. With particular severity, the souls spoke about abortion, stating that those unborn children cry out for vengeance in heaven. In many places, they said, their number surpassed that of births. They warned that the law against abortion should be stricter, and that doctors who discovered abortions during their consultations should be obliged to report them to the competent authorities. Regarding lay apostolate, the souls taught that it is a duty for every Catholic. Some exercise it by teaching, others by setting a good example. "We complain that many are corrupted by discourses against morals or religion," they said. "Then why do the others remain silent? The good must also defend their convictions and declare themselves as Christians." The souls also warned about the need for balance between caring for the soul and the body. The care of the soul should not be stifled by an excessive concern for the body, they taught. In one particularly solemn message on January 2, 1955, Maria clearly heard, "God demands an expiation." They explained that through voluntarily accepted sacrifices and prayer, we can expiate much. But if we do not accept these sacrifices willingly, God will demand them because expiation is necessary. Chapter 7. The Virgin Mary and the Souls. In the revelations received by Maria Simma, the figure of the Blessed Virgin held a central and luminous place. The souls of purgatory repeatedly told her that for them, Maria is truly the Mother of Mercy, whose powerful intercession eases their sufferings and accelerates their liberation. When the name of the Virgin Mary resonated in purgatory, the souls experienced indescribable joy. Maria Simma was able to witness the Mother of God frequently visiting purgatory, distributing graces according to the divine will. Her maternal presence illuminated those purifying darknesses, infusing consolation and hope into the suffering souls. One particularly moving revelation took place during the Feast of the Assumption. A soul told her that at the moment of its earthly death, the Virgin Mary had asked Jesus to liberate all the souls then in purgatory. The Son granted this request from his mother, and on the day of the Assumption, these souls accompanied Maria to heaven, for on that occasion she was crowned as the Mother of Mercy and Mother of Divine Grace. The souls explained that the month of November, especially from the Feast of All Saints onward, was a time of particularly abundant graces for them, thanks to the Virgin's intercession. During this period, Maria distributed the suffrages offered by the faithful of the Church militant with even greater generosity. Maria Simma's personal devotion to the Blessed Virgin was the spiritual foundation of her mission with the souls of purgatory. From her youth, she had consecrated her virginity to Our Lady and made the Marian consecration according to the method of Saint Louis-Marie Grignon de Montfort, offering it especially for the sake of the deceased. This total surrender to Mary had mystically linked her to the purifying souls. Once, when Maria asked a soul why she could see and hear them while other people could not, she received this revealing answer: "You are one of us." Intrigued by this expression, Maria asked for its meaning. The soul replied, "By your vow, you have especially consecrated yourself to the Mother of Mercy. She has given us to you, and that is why the path that leads to you is illuminated for so many souls. You do well to receive us diligently, out of love and compassion. In this way, you can free us more quickly, suffering less. You receive more graces and merits, and you can learn more about the souls of which you are informed." This special relationship with the Virgin Mary was the key to Maria Simma's mission. Through the intercession of the Heavenly Mother, the souls found in her a privileged channel to request prayers and suffrages. At the same time, Maria's maternal protection sustained her amid the terrible expiatory sufferings and defended her from the attacks of the evil one, who sought to hinder this work of mercy. Chapter 8. How to Help the Souls. Through her communications with the souls of purgatory, Maria Simma received detailed instructions on the most effective means to help them. These revelations, perfectly in line with Catholic doctrine regarding suffrages for the deceased, offered specific details about the relative value of each pious practice. The most powerful, absolutely irreplaceable means is the holy sacrifice of the Mass. The souls explained that a single Mass offered for a deceased person has an incalculable value, for it is Christ himself who is offered to the Father for the salvation of all. Some souls revealed to her that, thanks to a single Mass celebrated on their behalf, they were freed from long years of purification. Secondly, the expiatory sufferings consciously offered by the souls provide great relief. Every physical or moral suffering, from illness to everyday hardships, when offered with love for the deceased, becomes a currency of redemption for them. Maria Simma had experienced in her own body the efficacy of this means, accepting atrocious pains that significantly shortened the purification time of certain souls. After the Holy Mass, the Holy Rosary is the most effective means to aid the souls. Through this powerful Marian prayer, countless souls are freed each day, which without this help would have had to suffer for many more years. The souls expressed particular gratitude toward those who recited the Rosary for them, as they experienced immediate relief in their sorrows. Also, the practice of the Way of the Cross, with its rich contemplation of Christ's redemptive passion, provides great comfort to the souls in purgatory. By uniting our small sufferings with the infinitely meritorious sufferings of the Savior, we obtain abundant graces for those who complete their purification. Indulgences, the souls taught, are of inestimable value. They constitute a direct application of the infinite merits of Christ and the saints in favor of the living or the deceased. Whoever, during their life, obtains many indulgences for the deceased will also receive more than others at their final hour, the grace of fully obtaining the plenary indulgence granted to the dying. It is a cruelty not to use these treasures of the Church for the souls in purgatory, they affirmed. Almsgiving and good works, especially donations for the missions, effectively help the souls. Many of them specifically requested that Maria Simma pass on to their families the petition for donations to the missions as a means for their liberation. They explained that in our time, help for evangelization is a particularly meritorious work, given the great needs of missionary countries. Even seemingly simple gestures, such as lighting blessed candles or sprinkling holy water, provide relief to the deceased. An 11-year-old girl from the Kaiser family asked Maria Simma for prayers because she was in purgatory for having extinguished the candles burning over the graves on All Souls' Day, stealing the wax to play with. Blessed candles have great value for the souls, she explained. However, these means do not help all souls equally. If during life someone had little appreciation for the Holy Mass, it will benefit them less when they are in purgatory. Those who lacked charity during their earthly existence receive less help. Expiation is especially harsh for those who sinned by defaming others. Conversely, those who had a kind heart during life receive abundant aid. Chapter 9. Trials and Temptations. Maria Simma's extraordinary mission was not without harsh trials and temptations. The devil, furious at the help she provided to the souls in purgatory, sought by all possible means to divert her from this work of mercy. The attacks of the evil one were particularly intense during Holy Week in 1954. The Blessed Virgin had previously announced to Maria that that week would bring great sacrifices and trials, and that she would have to endure them alone. From April 10 to 17, 1954, she experienced what she described as a true descent into hell. The devil almost completely had me under his power. I felt as if I were in hell rather than on earth. Satan accused her of having made bad confessions and holy communions in the past. He assured her that she had committed a grave offense and had overlooked it with indifference. Although Maria responded that she could not recall such an incident, the enemy insisted, "Your conscience is so dulled that I have you at my disposal. The apparitions of souls are our illusions. None of those souls has been freed. We have told you many times, and you are so stubborn that you have not paid attention, but now you will bitterly feel that it is so." During these terrible attacks, the devil provoked frightening phenomena. Deafening noises as if the house were collapsing or in flames, the appearance of fireballs in her room, explosions as if from great blasts. All of this was intended to terrorize her and make her abandon her mission. In addition to these direct attacks, the devil also used deception, presenting himself as an angel of light. On one occasion, he appeared with the likeness of Father Reich from Nenzing, who had been her confessor, another time with the image of Canon Sattler, chaplain of the San Jose Institute, and on another occasion, under the appearance of the superior of the Sisters of the Heart of Jesus in Hall. The false canon tried to exalt her, presenting her almost as a saint, and induced her to renounce her vow of total surrender to Mary. Precisely because of this, she recognized the devil's stratagem. Firmly, she expelled him, saying, "If you are the devil, I command you in the name of Jesus to leave." She threw holy water, and everything disappeared. Amid these diabolical trials, Maria received the consolation of a soul from purgatory. Do not be surprised that the enemy makes you suffer. The tempter can likewise cruelly torture even the souls in purgatory that can no longer be lost, but only purified. It is not as punishment, but out of mercy that God allows it. For these souls are not vessels of wrath, but vessels of mercy, reserved for eternal splendor. The soul continued, warning, "Satan is furious with you and seeks within his power to disconcert you. If he could torture you at will, he would tear you to pieces, and you would not be able to read or keep any writings related to the help for the souls in purgatory. But he can only do what God allows him, and you are under the special protection of the Mother of God, whom he fears as he would a sword. Nevertheless, he seeks every opportunity to take revenge on you." The ultimate purpose of these temptations was clear. He would like to lead you, in your confusion and anguish, to renounce your vow of total surrender to the Blessed Virgin, thereby breaking your ties with the souls in purgatory. I warn you, he has already acted this way with other souls, and has even led some to hell. Those souls would be very glad if they saw him do the same to you. Do not be afraid or anxious. Be humble. The more modest you are, the less power the enemy will have over you. We help you, but the one who assists you most is the Mother of Mercy. One particularly terrible night, from 9 p.m. on December 2, 1954, until 4:30 a.m., Maria felt severe burns with no one by her side. She felt completely abandoned. From time to time, she heard an infernal noise that terrified her. Then, an infernal voice shouted, "We will come for you soon, you idiot." It was horrible, almost despairing. But the most terrible part was the feeling of being abandoned by God himself, of not being able to pray, and of feeling possessed by the devil. The next morning, at 4:30 a.m., suddenly, the sensation of burning and the tremendous fear of hell completely vanished. In addition to these diabolical trials, there were also human misunderstandings. When her gift of helping the souls in purgatory became known, the community was stirred by this strange and unusual fact. Reactions varied. Some believed spontaneously, others were more reserved, and others denied everything. Many wanted information about their deceased loved ones and offered abundant help for the souls. But there were also those who doubted, precisely because of Maria's simplicity and poverty, thinking that if it were not her, they would more easily believe in someone else. Chapter 10. The Verified Testimonies. The authenticity of Maria Simma's experiences was supported by numerous verifiable facts that ruled out the possibility of fraud or self-suggestion. These testimonies constitute solid evidence of the reality of her communications with the souls in purgatory. First, the physical sufferings Maria endured were objectively verifiable. They appeared and ceased at precise moments, corresponding exactly to the hours previously announced by the souls. These were not common illnesses, but extraordinary afflictions directly related to the sins she needed to expiate. Several people, driven by curiosity or suspicion, decided to observe her without her knowledge during her nocturnal communications with the souls. In the 2 nights prior to the Immaculate Conception of 1954, some young people climbed a ladder to the flowery balcony in front of the open window of her room. They heard her moaning softly and crying in anguish. They saw her searching for a handkerchief to wipe her tears. They heard her speaking with the souls in purgatory and asking them questions. They observed her taking notes. Although they did not see or hear anything of the souls, the experience made them reflect seriously, and they stopped mocking the apparitions. Maria later learned from a soul that she had been spied upon for 2 nights, but that this had happened for the benefit of the spies. When she found out that they had seen or heard nothing, she asked a soul how this was possible. "They are still alive," the soul replied. "But I am also alive," Maria retorted. The soul explained, "You are one of us. We are in the darkness, and the path that leads to you is illuminated." Another verifiable aspect was the accuracy of the information provided by Maria Simma about deceased persons entirely unknown to her. She transmitted specific messages to families, full names, dates, and even details about historical circumstances that, given her limited education, she could not naturally have known. Her parish priest, Father Alfonso Matt, sent much of these indications to other priests for verification and received confirmation of their accuracy. For example, Maria suffered terribly for a Cologne priest who died in the year 5055, who had participated in the martyrdom of Saint Ursula and her companions, a historical fact of which she had no prior knowledge. She was also able to warn, during the catastrophic avalanche of January 1954, that there were still living victims buried under the snow. The last one was found alive in Blons 2 days later, exactly as she had predicted. She also predicted other catastrophes that occurred throughout the Marian year. She announced, 2 days before it appeared in the newspapers, the summer flood of 1954 because the souls had communicated it beforehand. Maria's psychological balance was remarkable. Far from showing signs of emotional instability or a tendency toward fantasy, since she began to endure expiatory sufferings, she demonstrated greater calm and consistency. At the end of the Marian year, she experienced the natural fatigue after months of intense suffering, showing the normal need for rest that any person subjected to such circumstances would have. Chapter 11. The Spiritual Legacy. For nearly 60 years of silent mission, Maria Simma became a privileged channel of divine mercy toward the souls in purgatory. Her simple and discreet existence, entirely dedicated to this work of intercession, constitutes a spiritual legacy of incalculable value for the entire Church. From the 1950s, when the apparitions of souls intensified, Maria devoted every moment of her life to serving those poor, suffering souls who came to her pleading for suffrages. She offered daily assistance through the Holy Mass, recitation of the Rosary, carrying her own cross, enduring daily hardships, tribulations, penances, fasts, and her absolute submission to the divine will. She lived in extreme simplicity, far from worldly fame, in an authentic evangelical poverty. Her only wealth was her intimate union with Christ and her total consecration to the Virgin Mary. This life of silent self-sacrifice, misunderstood by many, resembled that of so many saints who, throughout church history, have mystically participated in Christ's redemptive work. Through her vicarious sufferings, countless souls obtained liberation from purgatory. Many later appeared to her, radiant with celestial light, to thank her for her generous intercession. According to what was revealed to her, these souls, once in heaven, became her intercessors before the throne of God, obtaining for her the graces necessary to persevere in her difficult mission. Maria Simma's life constitutes a living testimony to the communion of saints, a marvelous reality that unites the triumphant church in heaven, the purgatorial church, and the church militant on earth. Her mystical experience demonstrates the real efficacy of our prayers, sacrifices, and good works on behalf of the deceased, reminding us that Christian charity must extend beyond the confines of this world. Beyond her direct intercessory work, Maria Simma's spiritual legacy also includes the numerous teachings transmitted by the souls through her. These instructions, always in line with Catholic doctrine, address fundamental issues such as the Christian education of children, the importance of detachment and sacrifice, the gravity of abortion, the responsibility of parents in their children's religious formation, and the urgency of lay apostolate in our time. Through her heroic example, Maria reminds us of the seriousness of Christian life and the inescapable reality of divine judgment. Her experience refutes the contemporary mentality that tends to minimize the gravity of sin and its eternal consequences. At the same time, it testifies to the infinite mercy of God, who offers each soul the possibility of purification even after death. Maria Simma died in the odor of sanctity in 2004 at the age of 89, after a life entirely consumed by love for God and neighbor. Her beatification process has already been initiated, with the Church recognizing the exemplary nature of her Christian virtues. Her memory endures not only in her native Austria, but in all the places where her extraordinary testimony has reached. The title, Servant of God, that is already accorded to her perfectly expresses the essence of her life, a humble and constant service to God and the souls in purgatory. Her existence reminds us that true Christian greatness consists, as Jesus taught, in becoming a servant to all. In a secularized world that tends to forget eternal realities, Maria Simma emerges as a shining beacon, reminding us of the existence of purgatory, an expression of God's merciful justice and the efficacy of our suffrages for the deceased. Her life is a pressing invitation to renew this essential dimension of Catholic piety, so often neglected in contemporary pastoral care. Chapter 12. Prayer to Maria Simma. Servant of God. Maria Simma, humble messenger of the souls in purgatory, who in the silence of your simple life heard the moans of those undergoing purification, turn your compassionate gaze toward us. You, who knew expiatory pains and accepted them with love for the salvation of souls, teach us to value the treasure of everyday sufferings, offering them for our deceased brothers and sisters. Help us understand the gravity of sin and the need for purification. Intercede before the throne of mercy for our loved ones who have departed from this world. With the authority granted to you by your long experience in aiding the souls of purgatory, implore their swift liberation and entrance into glory. May through your intercession, we always remember the infinite value of the holy sacrifice of the Mass, the efficacy of the Holy Rosary and the way of the cross, the power of indulgences and almsgiving, to alleviate the sufferings of our deceased brothers and sisters. Maria, friend of the souls in purgatory, obtain for us from the Blessed Virgin, to whom you consecrated your entire life, the grace of tender devotion toward those who suffer in the purifying fire of divine love. Teach us to live as you do, in humility and complete surrender to God's will, accepting with love the daily sacrifices, so that at the end of our earthly pilgrimage we may behold without delay the merciful face of God. And if it is the will of the Most High to glorify you on earth, as you have already been glorified in heaven, deign to grant the grace we humbly ask for. The petition is expressed for the greater glory of God and the salvation of souls, especially those who complete their purification in the merciful love of purgatory. Amen.